Hey, what's going on guys? Arekkz here and welcome back to another video for Outriders, and in this one I want to take some time to talk about the classes. If you saw the What is Outriders video we uploaded yesterday, then you'll of course know that the game is going to have 4 different playable classes, and when we were at the event we had a chance to try out 3 of those. They haven't announced what the 4th one will be just yet, so that much is still a mystery, but we got to try out 3 of them, the Pyromancer, the Trickster and the Devastator, and in this video I want to take some time to talk about those individual classes, talk about what makes them special, talk about their moves, what we got to try out. Obviously we didn't get to try out everything, and some of the moves are still kind of work in progress, so they'll of course be fine-tuned, from now until launch, but this should give you an idea as to what we currently got to try out. Of course I want to give a massive shout out again to Square Enix for very kindly sponsoring this, and of course flying us out to Poland to go hands-on with the game, because that's of course where I got this gameplay from, so massive shout out to them. But let's start at the very beginning. So again, as mentioned, there are going to be 4 classes, but at the time we got to play as 3 different ones. So we might as well start off with the Devastator, because that's my personal choice, it's my personal favourite one. I have started to gravitate massively towards just playing these big old tanky classes where I can just run up and face tank stuff and just dive into the thick of battle. And that is basically what the Devastator is. The Devastator uses Earth as its kind of primary element. And one of the cool things about classes in Outriders is that every single class has a method for healing. So you're not necessarily going to have like a healer and a tank and a DPS. Every class can heal themselves through essentially a mechanic that resonates with their particular playstyle. So in the case of the Devastator, you recover health from killed enemies that are stood close to you. So obviously it kind of, goes hand in hand with the fact that you are going to be up in their faces. Now as you're playing through with your class, you'll of course unlock primary abilities. These are of course the things you could equip into your skill tree. You can have 3 active at one point, and you can of course swap these out, but then when you start getting pieces of gear and you can of course go down your skill tree, you can then further improve and augment these skills to a degree. The very first one you start with is Earthquake. With this you release a shockwave, damaging and knocking back nearby enemies in sort of a frontal cone, so it's pretty good. You run towards them, you throw it on the ground, it shakes them. Some enemies it will just, the weaker trash mobs, they just tend to get killed straight away, but otherwise it just sort of knocks and staggers enemies, so it's good if they're of course trying to shoot at you or maybe sort of line up a move or cast something. You can of course use this to stun them. Following on from there, you then have Golem, which is actually really cool. This is basically your heavy armor skill. With this, you fortify yourself against most damage, and the actual visual for this is that all these rocks essentially encase you. So, you'll have your normal armor on, you'll have jackets on or whatever. There were a couple of items, when you kind of equip this, it sort of clip with it, so obviously they'll work on that, but principally, you activate this and you then get encased in rock and you can just run into stuff and face tank. So this is pretty good, of course, goes hand in hand again with their playstyle. You golem up, run in, punch these in the face, heal in the process, so yeah, this allows you to stay in the fight. You then have Gravity Jump, which is a move that will launch you into the air, so you kind of almost retreat, you jump backwards, and from there you then select an enemy and you will then home in on them. You basically jump into the air, drop on a target, and then you deal knockback and damage to all nearby enemies. So you can kind of almost use it to elevate yourself and throw yourself into the middle of a big group of enemies. After that, we then have this one, really, really cool. You kind of have to sort of get a good group of enemies to really showcase it, but this is basically Neo in the Matrix. It's called Reflect Bullets, and literally as Neo does in the Matrix, you hold your hand up, this wall comes up, and anything that gets fired into it gets held, and then as soon as you dispel this, or you cancel it, the bullets then go flying back into the target. So, well, if you're kind of fighting things like one-on-one, you might not necessarily see it too much, but when you are kind of in a big group of enemies and you really get to show this, and you hold those bullets, it does feel pretty badass. You then have Impale, and this is it's kind of a brutal move, but it's also pretty cool to sort of like see this in motion. So with this, you select an enemy and you can knock them back and kind of like stick them in place with these sort of rocks from the ground. However, if you target this at an enemy that's almost dead, instead of just like pinning them to the location, it will instead physically impale them with a rock and just finish them off. So it's a really good way to whittle an enemy's health down and then just sort of pick them off to kind of do that finishing blow. Plus, it has the added effect that if you do happen to finish an enemy with it and pierce them with the, or impale them with the stone, nearby allies also get a slight buff, they get bonus armor and health regen for 9 seconds. So it's actually a pretty good team-focused ability. And then the last one we got a chance to check out is Stone Explosion. For this one, you cause a series of explosions that drain health from nearby enemies. So when you activate it, you see all these kind of yellow earth-like beams kind of go and connect to nearby things. And then of course you can use that to heal again. So that is, if you want to kind of throw yourself into the thick of things, then that could be a potential option. But yeah, honestly, this was kind of a cool class to use. It might not be as flashy as, say, the Trickster, as you'll see in a minute, but I just like the way that you can basically just be like a big old rock and run into battle. Now moving on from there to talk about the Pyromancer, this of course is kind of like your caster in that respect. It is a medium range conjurer who has the fire element. Your healing mechanic for this one is that you will recover health whenever enemies marked by your skills are killed. So that is pretty cool, and of course the description for this is that you cover your foes in flame, incinerate entire squads, and heal your own wounds as enemies fall in your inferno. Taking a quick look at your abilities here, you have Thermal Bomb, where you select an enemy to inflict burn and knockback on them, and if the enemy dies while affected by the status, they will then explode and deal damage in a large radius, which is pretty sweet. You then have Ash Blaze, which inflicts ash on all enemies in a large radius. That's sort of like a large kind of almost frozen status. You basically turn everything into ash and they freeze where they stand, so it basically means you can control a large group of enemies. You have Heat Wave, which is a wave that deals damage and inflicts burn to enemies in front of you, so kind of like a sort of burn version of like the Earthquake move for the Devastator. Then moving on from there, you have Overheat, which deals a little bit of damage and knockback to all enemies in a large radius, but you get additional damage if it's dealt to enemies that are afflicted by burn and the status condition is then consumed. So this is obviously kind of a nice combination one. You set them on fire, you then overheat them. It is pretty lethal. You then have Fire Bullets, which is really cool because with this it fills your weapon's mag with anomaly infused bullets that inflict burn, so you can basically just have incendiary bullets no matter what gun you've got, which is really cool because especially when you pair that with something like Overheat, you can then set enemies on fire or inflict burn either through your skills or through your bullets. And then finally we had Heat Absorption, which with this one you select an enemy to drain health from them, pulling them towards you and inflicting ash in the process. Now, jumping over from there, finally to speak about the Trickster. This, of course, was Vestmore's class. This is kind of like your time and space manipulation stealth. Like if you're going to kind of categorize it, it's like your rogue ninja. The healing mechanic for this class is that each enemy killed in close range heals you and extends the duration of your shield, which is pretty handy because, of course, you're not quite as heavily armored as the Devastator. These guys can bend the laws of space and time to appear out of nowhere, assassinate your enemies, and return safely in the blink of an eye. First up, you have Temporal Slicing as your first ability. This paralyzes and time slices enemies in front of you, and it inflicts slow, which of course is pretty handy if you don't happen to kill the enemy. It's of course going to slow them down as they try to escape or reposition. Following on from there, you then have Slow Trap, which creates a space-time anomaly, which is like this big kind of bubble sort of area, so to speak, and anything inside that is slowed down. So this is pretty cool because anytime you pop that, if you happen to defeat enemies and you see their limbs come off or anything like that, then it all happens in slow motion. So this is actually really good for the Trickster because you can pair this with quite a lot of your moves. You then have Hunt the Prey, where you select an enemy to teleport behind them and you receive a shield bonus. So of course, if you want to get in close, then you can use this as a means to dash in. You have Twisted Bullets, where you fill your weapon's mag with anomaly infused bullets that deal significantly more damage to enemies, and the skill lasts until you reload or switch your weapon. So again, very similar to the Pyromancer, you can imbue your bullets with your element. You then have Round Slice, which is kind of like your Beyblade spinning top tornado move, however you want to describe it. You generate a whirlwind of anomaly blades, and these deal damage to nearby enemies, and of course you can control yourself so you can move around in the process. So combining this with the sort of slowing down field from before is a pretty lethal combo. And then finally you have Borrowed Time, where you shield yourself and mark your location. Triggering the skill again will then bend space-time and teleport you back to the marked spot. So if you wanted to combine that with the previous skill that allows you to teleport to an enemy, you can then use this as a means to then get back out once you've dealt your damage. So again, typical kind of rogue stealth playstyle. But anyway, that, my friends, is a quick look at the classes, the 3 classes we know about so far in Outriders. If you have any questions, by all means drop them in the comments down below, and of course keep it locked for more Outriders content.
Watch out for the frog! best.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that video. Remember to hit that subscribe button and also click on the little bell icon to turn on notifications so you don't miss my next upload. Also, don't forget you can check out 269 and Paradise Central streaming over on Twitch 6 days a week. You can find a link to the multi-stream in the description box down below. Be sure to drop by and get involved. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.